Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable, the battle over expanding the state's Medicaid program heats up as the legislature begins hearings on the proposal. The U.S. Supreme Court hears oral arguments over Arizona's voter registration law and a setback for the group trying to recall Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Those stories and more next on the Journalists Roundtable.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining me tonight are Mary Jo Pitzel of the Arizona Republic, Howard Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Jim Small of the Arizona Capital Times. Well, the governor calls for the legislature to focus on her Medicaid expansion plan. Was this a gentle nudge in the ribs, or was this a veiled threat, or not? What was this?
It's probably, as things go, a gentle nudge to the legislature. A little bit of a push. I mean, when the governor wants to when she's really mad, they'll know because she'll be vetoing bills. But what happened is this week, everybody was waiting for the Senate to pass to pass a bill on lottery winner secrecy. Seems like it's pretty much a slam dunk. It's moving through the legislature easily, and President Biggs didn't bring it up for a final vote. So, well, why? And he says, well, the governor has asked us to pace ourselves, he says. The governor's office says, well, no, we actually want them to speed up, but we want them to speed up on the important issues like Medicaid expansion and sales tax reform and, getting a budget out. By the way, Tuesday was the informal deadline for having a budget out.
And what's lost in all that is that deciding lottery winners' names should remain secret is a lot simpler to do than dividing up $9 billion or deciding how we're going to simplify the sales tax system and whether the cities wind up under the bus on that one. And somehow that got lost in the equation. These will all happen at some point. Now, if the governor thinks she can hold up the process, I don't know. She did manage to sign a few bills the other day, so she isn't bringing the whole process to a halt. But if she thinks that she can hold her breath and stamp her feet and make it happen, not going to do.
Slow down the pace. Has the pace been unusually fast to begin with?
Well, the pace has been, the last couple of weeks have been deadline weeks. They've been operating trying to get under a deadline that, basically at the end of the day yesterday. So things have been fast and furious in committees and somewhat on the floor, but mostly moving bills from chamber to chamber. We are getting to the point, though, where now that they're done with all their committee work, the bills are going to the floor. They're going to go up for final votes. They're going to go into conference committees, things like that. And so this really kind of puts the brakes on all that. So you'll see bills get passed in one chamber if they have to be sent back, from the Senate to the House or House to the Senate. But those bills that are ready to go, like Mary Jo was saying, that are ready to go to the governor's desk, those apparently aren't going to be moving. Yeah,
things will slow down in the sense that when the House and the Senate meet in their full floor sessions, their calendars are probably have already been getting a little lighter. They're not loaded up with lots of bills because they're going to have to start, in that regard, they're going to have to start pacing themselves so that they keep the members busy while all the negotiations go on behind closed doors about the budget and Medicaid and sales tax.
Well, here's the other piece of the problem as we saw this week. No matter how much focus you put on Medicaid, the votes are not there for this plan. The House Speaker said he will not put up her plan as is.
Straight votes or two-thirds?
Either way, I think. Well, let me put it this way: you might be able to, if you could go ahead and get all the Democrats and a few Republicans on board, you might. But neither the Speaker nor the Senate President is going to let a bill go to the floor where it has only 7 Republicans voting for it and 24 Democrats. So I think certainly you're not going to get it out with two-thirds, no matter almost no matter what. But I think even the simple majority. The Speaker said we need some other things in there. We need to make sure that the circuit breaker works. We need to figure out, is this a tax? How does this all fit together? The hearing this past week was ugly. People talking past each other. This was supposed to be an informational hearing. It was basically just an airing of the grievances.
Was there much information in this informational hearing?
I think the most startling thing that came out of it was the county Republican chairman's comment about the governor. I mean, he's talking about the Republican governor of his party, and he said Jesus had Judas and Republicans have Jan Brewer. And that's what everybody focused on. And there's more on that story, but the information that came forward, no, it's nothing that people haven't already heard. Yes, access has been good. It has helped me, keep my eyesight. It has healed the sick, And then on the other side, this is very expensive. How can we know that there will be money, down the road from a bankrupt Congress, a bankrupt federal government to pay for this program, and then it'll drop into our laps? But we've heard these arguments for the last couple of months.
It sounds like familiar arguments. We've certainly heard it on this program, and when we discussed this issue. I mean, again, are people talking? Are they clashing? Are they veering off into areas that have absolutely nothing to do with Medicaid expansion?
Well, there was some of that. I mean, it was certainly an exercise in theology. I think there was a lot of discussion about what was right from a moral perspective and a theological perspective, and the discussion kind of got sidetracked a little bit on those grounds. But yeah, I think right now they are still kind of talking past each other in the sense that you have two groups of people who believe diametrically different things, or view the situation, I think, even more to the point. They view the landscape as completely different. One side sees this as being absolutely essential, and another side sees this as an affront to the American way of life. And so, when you're in that kind of situation, in that black and white, that starkness, it's really tough to get people to even agree that there is common ground that needs to be found, much less to find the common ground.
But to one of the points that Howie made, I mean, is the hospital assessment that this plan would need, is that a tax? Well, one way to figure that out is bring a bill up for a vote. You've got to have something to challenge, or you've got to have something at least for the Rules Committee to chew on, and that can't happen until you introduce a bill and get the process moving.
The problem is that there is precedent for the governor's logic. In other words, for example, you might have told the Game and Fish Department or Board of Cosmetology, you can raise such fees as you need to cover certain costs. Now, we're not going to set the fees because that would require a 2/3 vote. Well, okay, now we're talking, $300,000 versus $250 million. Now, we know what we are, and we're just negotiating the prices. The old joke goes, is the ability of the Access Director to levy an assessment, to levy up to $250 million a year, a tax? And is it, in fact, then giving too much power to tax to the executive branch of government?
But why don't you, if you are pushing for this and you see the 2/3 it just isn't going to happen, why don't you just go for the straight vote? If you get the straight vote, wait to see if there's any kind of challenge to it.
Well, part of the problem is that if there's a challenge to it, if it's held up, we've got a December 31st deadline when the Affordable Care Act kicks in. If there's no money coming in, if the judge enjoins access from collecting that money, there's no money to put up.
As far as Heather Carter now, who is the point person for using this is she making some waves here? Is she making some heavy footprints here, or what's going on?
Yeah, Republican activists have promised to mount challenges against anybody Republicans who support this, and Heather Carter was one of the most prominent supporters of it early on. And this past week, she got a challenger. It's a precinct committee woman from, in fact, the same precinct as Heather Carter. So she lives literally in the same neighborhood as her. Her name's Heather Casey, and she filed paperwork to form a campaign committee, and they held a brief and somewhat unusual press conference at the state house this week.
Well, it might be interesting to see a recall actually develop just for the pure theater of, wasn't there a movie called Heathers? And we could see this playing out.
When I first heard this, I thought Heather Carter, Heather Casey. I mean, did they recruit someone with the same name to try to get confusion?
Well, you're assuming that the folks in either political party are that bright, number one. No, look, every time the Tea Party element of the Republican Party sees something they don't like, they threaten action. Common Core, which we'll talk about, Medicaid, the Prop 100 tax. It's always, we're going to get rid of you. The Republican Party is at war with itself, and that's the big problem the Republicans have. Is there really two Republican parties in this state?
You mentioned Common Core. This is an education standard and assessment along with a test that goes along with it. This thing has been, I think, 1st through 3rd grade now for the past year or two or maybe 3. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden now it's being compared to Agenda 21 and the UN takeover. What is going on here?
Well, people have taken a look at this, or perhaps not taken a look at this, and seen this sort of one world rule being imposed. This is a program that I think there's 46 states now that have adopted Common Core. Arizona is one of them. They're moving towards it. What's happened this year? I can't really say, except that a couple of groups, got a hold of some talking points, and to their credit, they have made their voices known very, very clearly and loudly at the Capitol.
Well, there's really two issues here. Number one, this idea that there's some set of national standards, and we want to control Arizonans and how our kids think and what our kids think. And then I think the other half of it gets maybe down to the weeds, but there are a lot of folks in Arizona who are the very basic C-spot run type of teaching. Common Core doesn't say how you teach, but it says in 3rd grade you should be able to analyze this. In 5th grade you should be able to figure that. And there are a lot of folks saying, no, I was taught this way, and we're going to do it this way, and the rote learning is the way to do it. But that's been the problem with Ames. You're rote learning to the test, and it doesn't prove anything.
Is it really the teaching method, though, or is it just the fact that it's called Common Core, the federal grants are involved, other states are cooperating, and there's a threat to Arizona not being able to teach kids the way maybe a school district wants to?
Well, and I think certainly the fact that it's coming, at least at the current moment, from the Obama administration. I mean, adopting the Common Core standards was a requirement for the Race to the Top grants, which Arizona applied for and got some money from. And so there's, a lot of it is that segment of the voting populace that just is so adamantly opposed to anything that Obama has his hands on, that's driving part of it as well. I mean, that goes along with a number of the things that we've been talking about and that the legislature is going to have to deal with this year.
But they also oppose anything national. No Child Left Behind, which goes back to the Bush administration. Same sort of arguments. Why are we cooperating with these folks? We want to do things our way. Oh, and keep that federal money coming, by the way.
And the opponents have been successful to the point that yesterday there was a bill in the Senate Education Committee that it was a necessary component to keep the state moving on the path towards Common Core. It would allow the transition from Ames to a new test called the PARCC. And they wound up having an informational hearing and no vote, so the bill to create that died. Later in the day, the Senate picked up an amendment, amended a bill, and put a few little pieces in this amendment that will at least keep that effort moving forward. It doesn't get you to Common Core, but it at least keeps it moving in that direction, and it spares the state from being in a situation where you might have kids having to take the Ames test as well as another high-stakes test to graduate from high school.
And real quickly, wasn't Arizona at the forefront of developing this particular?
It was very early on. I mean, the fact is, and Governor Brewer had commissions and meetings and was very interested in the idea that we need to change how we teach and what we teach and have the goals. And one of the advantages of Common Core is we keep hearing, where we are, we're 47th in funding, or we're this much in academic performance. The problem is Ames is not comparable to anything. If you go with a standardized test, we can find out if our 3rd graders are learning the same thing as the 3rd graders in Utah or Maryland.
One other consequence of this is that another bill that would have given school districts more money, individual schools more money if they opted to expand the school year to 200 days. That thing was moving along. It got killed yesterday.
Wow.
Sort of with the same kind of logic. I know that in the House, when in its early stages, Representative John Allen felt that this bill takes away from family time. So it's just a bad idea. And I think others, as time went on, embraced it. This was a bill that was brought forward by freshman Representative Paul Boyer, a Republican from Phoenix.
All right. Let's keep it moving here. And Jim, the idea of a bathroom bill, that the legislature has to regulate bathroom use. Really?
Well, apparently so. Apparently not this past week, though, because there was a procedural hang-up that kept the bill from being heard. It's kind of a technical rules issue. And supposedly it's going to be coming back next week in some form. The idea is to require that people can only use the bathroom for the gender that is on their birth certificate. And it's aimed, I think, basically at the city of Phoenix. They expanded their anti-discrimination policy. Critics seized on a component of that would have allowed transgendered people to use the bathroom that they're comfortable in. And there was some concern about, whether this was good public policy, safe for children, all this other stuff. So hence we've got this bill to go ahead and say, no, even if you are, I guess, a post-op transsexual, that you still have to use the bathroom that you were born to use. And so it'll be an interesting hearing when this thing goes before committee.
And what's interesting is I checked with the city of Tucson, which has had a similar ordinance now for 16 years, And I asked their human rights director, I said, so have you had a problem with that? And she said, bathrooms? You're kidding. It doesn't seem to be a problem. Bathrooms, there are stalls, people go in. There are a lot of places with unisex bathrooms. You go to certain football games, and because of the line, the women's room is long. Occasionally, you'll see a woman duck into a men's room because the lines are shorter. Right. Do we really want to make people going to jail for 6 months?
But even beyond, like a city like Tucson, which has an anti-discrimination law, there's lots of places in Arizona that don't. And I would assume that transgendered people have been using the restroom, public facilities, for many years. I think there's another issue too. Representative Kavanaugh told me, well, it's got to match your birth certificate. The little symbol on the door has to match the gender on your birth certificate. And he would assume that if someone has had an operation, that they would have their birth certificate changed. But I don't know if you can change the gender on your birth certificate.
Actually, I did check. In Arizona, there's a procedure. But it's interesting because there are two things. Either you get a certification from a doctor that you had gender reassignment, or you get a certification from a doctor that you are now chromosomally the other gender. Now, I haven't figured out exactly where that fits in, whether the plumbing matches the chromosomes, to put it that way.
And really, at the core, how are you going to enforce this? Who's going to be looking in places and asking for?
I think that's going to be a great question for the committee, and I'm sure that it'll be asked. That was I think one of the instant things that people said. They said, people looked at this bill and they went, really, we have to show papers to go to the bathroom? I mean, you have to carry around a birth certificate in order to go to the bathroom and not get thrown into jail.
Presumably, it would be complaint-based, and if somebody gets hit with a disorderly conduct charge, then somebody would have to do some fact-finding.
Okay, let's move on. Yeah. The Arpaio recall effort looking like some financial difficulties and perhaps even some legal concerns here?
Well, the bigger problem, I think, is the financial one, because, after the Russell Pierce thing, and there was a lot of, hey, we can do this. And there's a certain burnout that took place. I mean, Russell Pierce, you needed a very limited number of signatures because you're talking within a district, within a Republican Party. You need, something like 300,000 signatures, in a short period of time to do this. And a lot of folks said, wait, didn't we just do this election? So the money is short. Now, there are legal questions as to, can you do it so soon after the election? Is it targeting and everything else? But at this point, as one of our columnist friends said, he can keep his pink underwear. He doesn't have to pack it up. I don't think he's going anywhere.
It sounds as though the folks leading the recall are waiting to be helped out here by some big name Democrats, and we're not seeing a heck of a lot.
That was certainly what they said. I think a lot of people, just observing from the outside, were kind of expecting, that you'd see some money maybe come from out of state, or some of the unions or something like that. Just the traditional Democratic groups, and we don't know where they've gotten their money from so far, and certainly don't know who has rebuffed their attempts, their requests for money. But yeah, that was what they said, was that there were Democrats in Arizona who they expected to really kind of step up to the bar, and they didn't.
And there's one other fact. If they can get through the bill to change the recall process so you have a primary and a general and make it retroactive to January 1st, now we're back to a situation that even if there is a recall, Joe wins the Republican primary, then you have a Democrat running against him, and we're back to where we were in November.
If that were to pass, though, what about the timeable? Is it an emergency clause? Does it go into effect immediately? Does it have?
Well, you can make it retroactive, and
retroactive once it's signed into law.
Well, but if you get an emergency clause, it can be then retroactive. Now, if the petitions were somehow already filed before the 90 days,
right.
Now we've got a lawsuit
exactly.
here because of the fact that while the petitions were put in, the election has not yet been held. Now we're past the 90 days. Can you say Supreme Court?
That's what I was wondering about the timetable here,
yes.
Unless you go emergency. All right. Voter registration law argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. I know you've been covering the entire election process in Arizona. Good luck to you. I know it's complicated at best, but this was interesting in that the Supreme Court decided to hear this case in the first. I mean, this has been through the Ninth Circuit a couple of times, perhaps.
I think so. This all stems from Proposition 200, which voters approved, I believe, in 2006 or 4. And it says you've got to show proof of citizenship to register to vote, as well as you have to show ID at the polls. So finally, they get their day. This gets its day in court after lots of lower court challenges. Attorney General Tom Horne went back to argue the case on behalf of the state and said there's nothing unconstitutional about this. Prop 200 simply adds it doesn't take anything away from what federal law requires. It just adds a state requirement.
This is tricky because certainly, first of all, the voter ID part was always upheld. The registration part, the court said, and they never challenged the fact that Arizona's own form, which is 90-some% of the people use, has a proof of citizenship requirement. That was never challenged. There is a federal form that Congress mandated the Election Assistance Commission put together, and that simply has an avowal, I am a citizen, penalty of perjury. And it's been that issue that Horn is saying we don't have to accept that federal form absent the additional. And that's going to be tricky, because when Congress says this form is acceptable for voting for all federal purposes, and I'm not even going to get into local elections, how can a state say, well, no, but we want to add something else to it?
So it basically becomes, yet again, federal law does federal law trump state law.
Yeah, I mean, preemption was exactly really kind of at the core of what this argument was.
And this is an attempt to, for this last election cycle, we had a 2-track registration process. You could register on the state form, which had one set of requirements, or you could register with the federal form, which had a different set of requirements. And a lot of students, especially at ASU, got caught up in this because they use the federal form because they don't necessarily walk around with their birth certificate when they're coming out to college, especially if they're coming from another state, but they want to vote here. So whenever the Supreme Court rules, and I believe they said they'll do this by June, their decision should at least resolve this 2-track process that we have. Or perhaps it could set the state off on setting up its own requirements for local elections, as how he alluded.
Well, it'll be interesting to see just exactly how that vote falls, too, because Scalia was asking some interesting questions, and some scholars of the Supreme Court think that he could go really either way on this particular issue, which is surprising.
Which is surprising, although I'll tell you, you can lose a lot of money betting on what Supreme Court justices will do.
Tom Horn had his campaign finance case looked at by an administrative judge, and the judge basically said, if it were up to me, this thing's tossed.
Well, and this is fascinating because the Arizona law says very clearly, if you have a campaign finance law violation, the Secretary of State investigates and then refers it to the Attorney General's office. Well, the Secretary of State, and I don't know that Ken Bennett and Tom Horn are particularly friendly in the first place, but Secretary of State said, well, why would I refer it to the guy being investigated, and concluded that he had the authority to send it to the Maricopa County Attorney. The administrative law judge said, well, it doesn't matter. You have to follow the law. Then it's up to the Attorney General to declare a conflict, and then it can be farmed out somewhere else. And because those procedures weren't followed, there's no case. Now, Bill Montgomery, who's the county attorney, says, look, this is ridiculous. We're going to get to the same place, and just because we didn't go through this particular tunnel to get there is no reason to toss the whole complaint.
So Bill Montgomery's fighting back. Tom Horn gets a little bit of air, a little breathing room here. On this case. Ken Bennett and, and Horn himself, I think Tom Horn still considers the gubernatorial race perhaps a distant name. Who knows? But the political fallout from all this, what are you hearing on this? Is this anyone win, anyone lose, anyone?
On this particular issue, no. I mean,
no.
I don't think that this really changes anything. I mean, Howie's right. I mean, they're going to get to the destination. They're going to find another tunnel to get there. It'll happen. I mean, whether it goes to Bennett and then they invoke a session law that was passed last year that lets him hire his own counsel to do this stuff instead of referring it to the AG. I mean, there's a couple of options that Bill Montgomery and Ken Bennett are exploring as to how best to go about doing this. The one thing that they say they don't want to do is send it to Tom Horn, not because they think he'll do anything wrong with it, but just because it's kind of the appearance of they want to avoid any appearance of impropriety at all, even though legally he's not allowed to do anything to even touch the case except for to forward it on.
Yeah, it does help to shine a spotlight, too, on a bill that's sort of bumping along at the legislature, not doing too well, that would take election enforcement away from the Attorney General's office and put it, and away from the Secretary of State's office, and put it with the Clean Elections Commission. That way you get it out of the hands of the elected officials, elected politicians, and you put it in the hands of a 5-member appointed commission.
How likely is that?
Well, not only that, I mean, this is the same legislature that's also trying to put something on the ballot to defund the Clean Elections Commission.
I was going to say, clean elections, the two words together, I think, pretty much.
Yeah. So, look, this has been a year, as you point out to Mary Jo, of all sorts of election bills. We're fixing everything. Heaven help us when the legislature fixes the elections laws.
All right, and with that sobering note, we'll stop it right there. Good to have you all here. Thanks for joining us. Monday On Arizona Horizon, famed ASU physicist Lawrence Krauss makes his monthly appearance to talk about the latest science news, including new results on the search for the Higgs boson. That's Monday evening, 5:30 and 10 on Arizona Horizon. Tuesday, we'll find out why a solar panel assembly plant in Goodyear is closing. Wednesday, it's our weekly legislative update with the Arizona Capitol Times. Thursday, we'll hear about how best to navigate the Valley's real estate market. And Friday, it's another edition of the Journalists Roundtable. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.